And those that think there still is a middle class are, you know, by January or February, the dollar is going to be worth about, let's see, the euro is $1.40 now. It's going to be about $4 at the very minimum, probably around February or March. The euro is going to be worth about $4. That's inflation. It's unbelievable what the United States is doing to its own people.
And the Federal Reserve is selling it as if it's a good thing. We're going to fix the debt by inflating. Was it good for Argentina? Was it good for Zimbabwe, Weimar Republic, Germany, Russell?
Exactly. It's you know, all those platitudes about history repeating itself, America is the proof. It just goes over and over and over again, and the American people are acting. Look at this coming November election. What's going to change? Nothing. It's unbelievable that people are even believing the Republicans, because Obama is worse than Bush. He's continued Bush's policies and added more to himself. Not one presidential directive that Bush has laid out has been changed by Obama, and he's added more. And now he's directed the U.S. government to kill anybody that's they say is a terrorist. Just go shoot him.
Well, they're also rolling out the naked body scanners on the streets, the courthouses, the airports, and they admit, even the New York Times admits, it gives you cancer, and it gives the operators cancer, and they have 500 mobile trucks, 10 times more powerful than a chest X-ray, looking through our walls. This is 1984. This is psychopaths running the country.
Yes, it is totally 1984. You know, there's an interesting sidebar to that. You know, Orwell, when TV came out back in the 40s, he wrote the book, and he said 1940, and he labeled it 1948. And it was a factual thing that was going to happen based upon the advent of TV. His publisher said, look, this book isn't going to sell. Turn it into a science fiction and give it a different title. So he inverted 48 to 84, and voila, you had the science fiction prediction of what is happening right now.
And that's a true story. And, of course, he was a member of the Imperial Police in India, what we were talking about, developed for Indians in the U.S. Then he was a communist and thought that was the solution. Then he found out it was run by the same people. Then he worked for OSS. That's why his book was so accurate. He worked for them.
Right. And he's, it's amazing that the college students aren't, that's not required reading. But what can you say when 80% of the law schools in America do not teach the Constitution? You know, I have a daughter that just graduated from a law school. She had to almost demonstrate just to get a class on the Constitution at the University of Minnesota School of Law.
Unbelievable. Russell Means is our guest, russellmeans.com. Links up on Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com. Russell, I mean, it's all coming to a head. They've preemptively built the police state up in the last 20 years. Now they've got it lined up. Now they're imploding the economy. And the Pentagon comes out last month and says, we're afraid of a total collapse, but we've got martial law ready for the civil unrest. We're going to save you. I mean, it's amazing how they create the crisis, offer the solution.
Exactly, and then there's still warmongering over in the Middle East, trying to control that basis when every other major country, Europe, Russia, China, they're all making backdoor deals with the Middle East, while America is killing its young people.
And the reason they can't beat the Afghans and Pakistans is they've got the fighting spirit of American Indians, but they've got grenade launchers.
That's the difference. Grenade launchers and missile-firing shoulder weapons. It's a dirty war that cannot be won, just like in Vietnam.
Well, Russell, stay there. Let's talk about that when we come back. Russell Means, Indian icon, is our guest. But, Russell, you got cut off talking about the Afghanistan situation, the Pakistan situation being widened by the Nobel Peace Laureate Barack Hussein Obama. I mean, what a sick joke. You were making parallels to Vietnam.
Exactly. You know, he is the first Nobel Peace Laureate that when he made his acceptance speech, he justified war. It was unbelievable. Such a slap in the Nobel's face. But that's a phony organization anyway. It comes up every once in a while with something worthwhile, but most of the time it's for the elite. But yes, the situation in the Middle East is so blatantly obvious, and the fact that the ruling elite of America refuse to economically take advantage of the Green Revolution. You know, they're not going to go there until they have the oil unavailable. Now, and I'm not saying when the oil runs out. I'm saying when it's unavailable. The fact that Russia has most of the gold reserves left in the world, at any time they wish, they could flood the market with gold and just ruin the world economy. Of course, they'd have to ruin their own economy in the same instance. But I'm just saying, people are so unaware of what's really, really going on. You know, the debacle of the government's treatment of the BP spill in the Caribbean, for instance. You know, they've just been blatantly caught lying and misleading the American people about that disaster. It's just over and over again when American people are being not only slapped across the face but kicked in the butt, and yet they ask for more.
Let me... Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, it's like the king wears no clothes, the emperor wears no clothes, and so all the American people are starting to take off their clothes. It's just an absurd lifestyle.
I want to shift gears into just the overall mindset of these globalists. They admit they want to cut off the resources to, quote, end industrial age, so that we're basically all dependent on them in the reservation, a.k.a. the inner city slums that they've designed through dependence. I mean, it's the same model, but I remember over a decade ago, experts explaining that they were packaging the mortgages and selling them and then changing the mortgage rules, and now even CNN admits J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and others have been caught taking houses that were totally paid for, that they didn't even have a mortgage for. They've been caught selling to the Chinese the same mortgages over and over again. And now they've had to freeze all Bank of America foreclosures because people are learning about this. And just a few years ago, the media would say, oh, it's patriot liars. It's patriot, propaganda. It's paper terrorism. The pro se citizens going in and pointing out that the law had been broken in all these different ways with the mortgages. Now the people stood up and they're talking about freezing all foreclosures because of the total fraud. And then that dovetails with the, I don't know if you saw this, but Bloomberg reported, it should have been bigger news, that Prudential and others admitted in court that they made a secret deal 11 years ago with the Pentagon, with Veterans Affairs, to take the lump sum death benefits of 6 million dead and dying veterans going back to World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and up till today. And they take their money, and the government made a deal to let insurance companies do this. I mean, it's just like Core Exit, the average lifespan is 51 if you use Core Exit in the Exxon Valdez cleanup. Now they've used conservatively thousands of times, or over 45 million gallons of it in the Gulf, and Obama comes out and says there's no health problems. I could play the clip. No health problems, and this stuff isn't bad for you. It's just an ongoing devastation. And they tell us the oil has been completely cleaned up, and later admit that's a lie. I mean, they're using DU all over the planet, 14 times birth defects and cancers in Fallujah, 3 to 4 times in our own troops. They tell the troops, go ahead and use it, it's not bad for you. What is this psycho? It's just, they're destroying their own nest. They've gone completely loony to just crime never before seen. Russell, can you comment on what you would call this spirit of pure wickedness?
I would call it medieval. It's exactly the way, you know, before Timbuktu and immediately after, that was the only place they could get gold and silver was Timbuktu in Africa. And so consequently, the only ones who had money were the royalty of Europe. And the serfs were allowed to barter, and that's all their monetary value is in bartering. But there's a curious exception there. When during medieval times, the serfs, every time the lords of the manor, the royalty, would increase taxes beyond 25%, the serfs would rebel. Now here in America, you are taxed. The average American is taxed 43% of his income.
And that's conservative.
Exactly, and that's very conservative. I said the average American. That includes the unemployed. So, and then the other thing is what they've learned from the banks and the realty companies and the corporations. The government is now using all kinds of phony values to perpetuate the printing of their own money and to make it valuable, so that they can continue on this illegal printing of bogus paper.
Well, we now know they're taking thousands of houses where they don't even have the deed and the home's paid off. This is mainstream news. I mean, it's just that they must think they're invincible, but they're not, because it's shutting down. I think they've gone, but you know, I talked about they perfected it on Native Americans, on Indians, as you prefer to be called, but going back, they really perfected it, or started it, with Europe. If you look at serfdom and how they kept them on tiny pieces of land, how they kept them at near starvation, wrote manuals on it, this was just a continuation and expansion of that same European royal system.
That's my point. The other thing is the phantom economics that the corporations have given birth to, that the government has also been a part of. For example, right here in the state of South Dakota, the state of South Dakota's Attorney General trades the Pine Ridge and all the Sioux Indian reservations. There's 9 of us in the state of South Dakota. They trade it on Wall Street through Dun and Bradstreet. The value of the reservation, the value of each individual on the reservation, and we're all on welfare. Yet we still have a phantom value on Wall Street. And so the tax base, we represent less than 10% of the state's population, yet we are 25% of the tax base, and we don't pay real estate taxes on the reservation. Go figure that out. And so it's understandable now that these states, excuse me, have been using Indian lands and Indian population in phantom financial instruments.
Yeah, they're leveraging it and then making stuff up.
Exactly. And so it's a house of paper, a house of cards, whatever you want to label it, but it hasn't any financial foundation, and that's what America's been operating on for decades.
So is it bold arrogance, imperial hubris, or is it desperation that they're now getting so greedy they're grabbing houses they don't even own that are paid for?
You've hit the nail on the head. You know, they're now getting desperate because the wealth has been absolutely used up. The wealth of America has been used up and indebted. So it's they have to go to this monopoly money in order to, and then these phantom financial instruments in order to keep their dominance. And guess where all of that phantom and the real money is going into the military, so they can at least still claim a place of leadership somewhere in the world.
Yeah, nuclear blackmail.
Exactly.
Well, Russell,
exactly.
You know, every day I get on the show and I see all the numbers, everything we talked about now confirmed in spades, worse than I could even imagine. You know, people say, Alex, you exaggerate. No. 9 times out of 10, it's worse than I can even articulate. I'm always learning more. It's so crazy.